Hey sons, try to imagine a world without signs. How would we find anything? We're surrounded by them, we rely on them to help us find what we're looking for. And when you think of a sign, you might first think of the ones like the ones on tops of poles at street corners, like this one. But a sign can really be anything that helps you navigate. I have a good friend who is Russian, and his name is Yura Belanotskin. Here's a picture of us backpacking a few years ago along the Barents Sea coast in northern Russia. It was awesome. When Yura was growing up, his father was the minister of communism in the Russian Navy, and that means that he was raised being taught there was no God. When he became a teenager, he and all of his friends would regularly go to the disco, which is the Russian way of saying that they would go off and drink and they would party. And he went along with his friends and he tried it for a while, but inside he hated it. And he was depressed like so many of his friends. And the thing is, they just didn't know how to deal with the pain. And they were using the parties and the drinking to avoid it and to numb that pain. So one time a friend invited Yura to go out fishing in the wilderness, and Yura loved it. And while his friends kept partying on the weekend, Yura would go fishing, almost always by himself. Because when he was in the wilderness, he found peace, and he felt thankful that he had this place that he could find happiness and peace. But he was confused because he'd been taught that there was no God. It was as if there was this sign inside his soul that told him otherwise. And so one day, while he was out fishing alone, he spoke up and out loud said, "I don't know who you are, but I know you're there. There's no way all of this beauty and goodness happened by accident. You must exist. So I ask you, show me who you are. I want to know more about you. Where are you? Who are you?" Months later, Yura got dangerously sick and was in the hospital for months. I think it was pneumonia. And while he was trapped there in a hospital bed, a missionary was also sick in the bed beside him. And this guy started telling Yura about Jesus and how through Jesus we can have this Father in heaven back. And every day they talked about this God that Yura knew nothing about. And at one point, the American missionary read a scripture from the Bible that was almost word for word what Yura had acknowledged about this unknown God in the wilderness. I believe it was from Romans chapter 1, where it says that all men are without excuse because God himself has made himself known. Not only that, but his generous, loving nature through all of God's creation. In Yura's heart, in his unhappiness, in the disco, in the wilderness, in the fishing, in the hospital room, using the missionary and the scripture, God had been putting up these signs for years to help Yura find his way home. So what about it? Who cares? Here's the point. God is more loving than we can possibly imagine. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to show you his love for you. So he's put up signs everywhere of all kinds, hoping that you'll read them. God is kind and he is loving, and there's always evidence. There's always a sign somewhere in the sky, in the sea, in the heart, in a culture, in a community where God is saying, pay attention. I am leading you back home. Just like this night right here, walking out of my garage, I was skateboarding with my son, and lo and behold, incredible flashes of lightning and rain and thunder. Always God putting on a show to remind us that he's in charge and that he's good, and we are wise to follow. But the world, for so many reasons, either doesn't see them or they choose to ignore them. So I'd like to take some of the signs that God's given us and make them into actual wooden signs and stick them up right here in my garage so that we can inspect them, look carefully at them. I'm learning just like you how to see God and how to know him. And my hope is that we can begin to look at the world differently and see God, this loving God, everywhere like Yura did. I want you to see how much he loves you, because when you begin to see that, as I have, you'll begin loving him back. You can't help it, because that's what he wants most from you. One of my favorite writers is C.S. Lewis, and he wrote this: "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." Until next time, let's keep our eyes open, keep asking questions, and be a son.